Hi and welcome to part 2 of the art of storytelling. This session won't be quite as long as part 1. So just to recap, in part 1 we had a couple of exercises that would be really great for you to do. The first exercise was looking over your keywords as to the kind of reaction that you wanted to elicit from your viewers when they look at your photos. The second one was some keywords around the kind of stories that you'd like to tell. And the third one then was working on some of the constructing your own story sort of brainstorming activities where you're going through the different, the 5 or 6 different keywords we had: the character, the location, the time, the colour, the props, and the emotion that you wanted to do. So it'd be really great to start to see a few people popping some ideas up. I'll pop some up on the Meetup side as well. But to start off with this particular session, just to give you an idea of the consistency I was talking about in part 1, whereas having that same sort of similar vibe going through everything you do with your photography. Obviously this is the Meetup page that you're all familiar with. To just show you then also, I do keep that same consistency across my Flickr page, and I do also keep that same consistency across my web page as well. So in this particular session, what we're going to be doing is a bit of behind the scenes, just to show you my pre-planning around some shoots and how I go about it. Back obviously when I was at art school, we were always encouraged to keep a visual arts process diary, and so that was a very manual thing where we would actually literally have a diary. We would sketch out ideas, we would keep clippings of other photos, sort of basically like doing a collage. You would do drawings, you would do little paintings, you would keep poetry, you would keep text, song lyrics, all of those sorts of things in one place. So I guess now fast forward to 2015, and for most photographers and a lot of artists tend to use a bit more of a digital format now. And I know particularly for photographers, Pinterest has become a really wonderful place to keep all your ideas together. I have lots of different Pinterest boards, some that I have public and some that I have private. Some of them I've put onto and pinned onto my my website, so people can click straight through to those and access them. I'm very much always in love with abandoned places and have lots of pins there about that. Some of the other, photo shoots I'm working on, some things that I'm inspired by. And I do also have some private ones. Usually the only reason I'd have private ones is if I'm particularly working on a series or a shoot personally that I, kind of just want to work on but not publicize to the whole world that that's what I'm working on or that's what I'm thinking about. That's the only reason why I would keep the pin secret. I do have a couple of the shoots here, like the Snow White, the Princess and the Pea, and the Goldilocks, and I do usually just let the workshop participants, I usually invite them and send an invite to those, and that way I can share some of the ideas of what I'm thinking about. But I do use Pinterest. I find I go through and I collect text, I collect quotes, I collect all different kinds of things, and even some of my own photos sometimes, and I pin them to keep them all together, so that way I've got my ideas organized. So it really kind of becomes like a pseudo visual arts diary in that respect. I do always make sure that when I've got an upcoming shoot, I share and always invite the model, and if I'm using a hair and makeup artist, not that I normally do, but if I am, I try and get anyone who's involved. I always invite them to the Pinterest board, so that way then they can see what I'm thinking about, and it's a lot easier to describe. I also do have some Pinterest boards that I've started. I have an editorial one, and I use this particular one a lot with the models because I like to show them the kinds of poses that I'm looking at and using. This kind of a pose over here I very much used in the Goldilocks shoot. There were some similar poses I got the model to do, and it's just a lot easier if before the shoot you can show the model different ideas of what you're thinking, whether it's the posing, whether it's the lighting, whether it's the clothes. And sometimes I'll collect different pins for different reasons. Sometimes I collect them because of the outfit, sometimes I collect them because of the pose, sometimes it's the hairstyle, the background, the colours, that sort of thing. So it's really important to share those things with other photographers involved, with other, like I said, hair and makeup artists, definitely the model. It's good to have the Pinterest board there during the shoot. Definitely show the model before the shoot again, just to keep it fresh in her mind, the direction that you're going with the shoot. And also then I quite often have it there also for other photographers in the workshop if they get a little stuck for ideas or a little bit nervous about, and they get that real creative block come up. I like to have the Pinterest board there that they can refer back to. Someone did suggest to me I may even, in some of the upcoming shoots in the studio ones, print some of the photos off and actually have them on the walls around, so it's a bit easier for everyone to quickly look at. But I just find it's the best way to share your concept, share what you're thinking about with the shoot, and then let everyone come back and refer to it if you need some pose ideas, the model needs re-inspiration, anything like that. It just makes the shoot run a lot smoother. Now I'll just go back over here now that the shoot that I said I was going to start to show you some quick behind the scenes ideas was the Van Helsing one. Now with Van Helsing, or with any of the dark fairy tales and the dark adventures, the direction that I was heading with all of these shoots was not the Disney cookie cutter version. I was very much going back to the original roots of the stories, which were a lot darker and a lot deeper and definitely more psychological than the Disney versions. So whilst I love the imagery of, and I'm certainly a huge fan of Hugh Jackman, and I love the imagery of Hugh Jackman from the most recent Van Helsing movie, the actual storyline, I did actually rewatch that, and that's the other thing too. I do use a lot of movies as references, a lot of music, and I will quite often go back and rewatch movies and TV shows and things like that spark ideas in me. So I did just recently rewatch Van Helsing, and whilst I do like it, to be honest, I do feel that it's very much a cookie cutter version of the story. So whilst there are aspects that I love his coat, I'm probably not going to take a ton away from the Hugh Jackman version. Nothing against the way that they've put the movie together. I just wanted to go a little bit deeper than that. That being said, the model that we're using, the male model, he is an actor, and he does have longer hair. So I did pick him specifically because he did have that slightly sort of Hugh Jackman kind of flowing locks kind of a look. So I think probably the only parts I will pull from this particular version of the story is I love that jacket. I am going to move mountains to see if I can't get a hold of a jacket like that. I do have a slightly smaller one for a lady or for a child that I have a teenage son who models, and he does a lot of steampunk, and I do have a similar jacket that fits him. I don't think it's going to work with this shoot, so I will have to source something else. Just on that, touching on the wardrobes and the props temporarily while we're looking quickly at the Hugh Jackman one, I don't try and spend a lot of money on the shoots and the props where possible. I was really fortunate at the end of last year to actually attend a workshop with American photographer Brooke Shaden, and she's been a huge inspiration on many levels, but for the most part, because she does this exactly the same, she spends so little dollar-wise on each of her shoots. She really purposefully goes out of her way to make sure she either uses objects that she's got, cheap objects that she can source, and she makes a lot of the stuff herself as well. And I personally like to use that as a bit of a background basis for my shoots. I do go to a lot of op shops to source the clothes. I do find in Sydney the best op shop is the Salvos at Minchinbury, which is out in Western Sydney, only because it is ginormous. I've been to pretty much every op shop in Western Sydney. I'm based in the hills in sort of northwest Sydney, and I do just find that one at Minchinbury is just awesome. They are open on a Saturday morning. What's kind of bummed, today's Anzac Day, so of course they're not open today, and I really actually did need to pop over there, which is a bit of a pain, but that's alright. So I do try and source the clothes from op shops where possible. I used to, for a lot of shoots, go to costume hire places. There is a wonderful costume hire place, a huge place at South Windsor called Water UB. But to be honest, I actually just found that their prices, they're just getting too expensive, and it's not. You need to make sure the shoots are worthwhile for you to do. If you've got a concept, but the concept's going to cost you, $500, $600, $700 to produce. On top of that, then you've got your model cost, and then hair and makeup artist, the set itself. You could easily, very quickly approach $1,000 for a shoot set up without even really blinking. So I do always make sure that I source my clothes for the photo shoots as cheaply as possible. I do have a nice little collection now of outfits, dresses, clothes, jackets, hats, accessories and things like that going, and I always keep everything that I use because you do come back and use pieces again. So the op shops is a great one. If you have got vintage markets around, look, that's fantastic too. Sometimes they can be a bit trendy, and again the price gets up there a little bit. And then beyond that, you can look at sort of garage sales. There is trash and treasure markets, that sort of thing. If you've got great, $2 shops nearby, you can get a lot of props from $2 shops and reuse those. And I tend to kind of actually have props all over the house now, so in a pinch for a shoot, I can grab things quickly together. My garage is getting very full. I do have some crazy props in my garage. I did have an interesting moment last year with my neighbour. We were standing in my driveway talking with the garage door up, and of course I have a full-size prop adult coffin in the garage, and of course he literally died and hit the driveway when he saw my coffin. But yeah, look, it's great to have a whole series of props, chairs, tables, all kind of crazy things, fabrics that you can pull together at the last minute. The other thing I will quickly touch on there while we're talking about sort of props and clothes and things like that, as I said, I actually personally don't use a hair and makeup artist very often. Only because I guess the type of photos that I take and the way I sort of structure my shoots, they're not glamour shoots, they're not beauty shoots. And I tend to like the girl's hair, especially if I'm using female models. I tend to like their hair out and flowing for what I do. I tend to use their hair and wrap it a lot. I like it messy, but that's only because it goes with my style. So you may find that that may not work for you. The best place I find to source models, hair, makeup artists, those sorts of things, usually Facebook is actually the best. There's lots and lots of groups on Facebook now that you can join. And I do actually find the quickest and easiest way to find any model, makeup artist, etc. is Facebook. I do have an account on Model Mayhem. I find that you have to kind of just be a bit more proactive with Model Mayhem. You actually need to contact the models and the hair and makeup artists yourself with a quick blurb about what you're doing and see if they're interested. It's a bit more hit and miss. It is a good way to look at models' portfolios though, and you can approach the right model that suits the shoot you're doing. I just find in the past when I've put out casting calls, you don't tend to get much of a response, whereas Facebook, you'll get literally inundated with people. I always make sure that I get back to the models very quickly, even if I'm not interested, with a bit of a thank you letter, just like when doing a job interview. Have a quick thank you letter there, template that you can just fire back at them and you look, thank you very much. I'm not sure if the look that you've got is right for this particular character, but I will definitely keep you in mind. Some of them I'll see, models' portfolios come through and instantly I know they're not right for this shoot, but they'll be great for the next one I'm planning. So I will actually tell them that and put them aside and come back to them. I do always pay the models. I do always negotiate the price up front. I tell them right from the minute I contact them how much I can afford to pay for that shoot. How much I pay depends on the type of shoot, and it depends on what I'm doing. Depends if it's a really quick and easy thing or if it's going to be something that's more intricate and requires them to travel a long distance. A lot of my own personal shoots I shoot on location and I literally need the model to drive maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours to get there. So I do take all those things into consideration. So when I pay a model, it can range from anything from $50 to maybe $300 or $400 for one particular shoot. That's usually for 2 hours. And then if there's any travel time, I do sometimes pick the models up and drop them off, but that's more of a personal thing. It depends, I think, on the rapport you've got with the model. I do have some models that shoot time for print, but that's usually only in circumstances where I'm not being paid for the shoot. A lot of models, if you're doing a creative shoot that is more for exhibitions or for galleries or magazine submissions, where I'd like to make it clear up front with the models what the shoot is for. I always pay the models for the meetups. I would never ask them to do that for free. I charge for the meetup. I charge the participants to be involved, so of course I pass that on to the models. Usually the only ones that I do time for print are models that I have a good rapport with. I have 2 or 3 models that I've literally worked with and shot just over and over again. I have running sort of open model release forms with them. I don't get them to sign forms every time. I have an open-ended release form or a contract that basically says, they're happy for me to use any images and vice versa. They're allowed to use my images for any shoots that we have under this contract. I do have a couple of models who work specifically with myself and maybe only 2 or 3 other photographers, and that's really wonderful because you do get to a stage where you have a really great rapport with them. I do work, and a lot of my work is nude photo shoots, male and female, And again, that's something that you just get a rapport with. If anybody is interested in doing sort of getting into that sort of genre of photography or wanted contacts with models, just message me and let me know. It is one of those things, as I said, you need to build up a good relationship with, a good working relationship with the models when you are looking at doing those sorts of fine art nude portraits. So I think that covers everything there. Sorry, we've been staring at Van Helsing for a long time. There's worse things to stare at than Hugh Jackman. So getting back to our Van Helsing shoot now behind the scenes. So I start to collect images on Pinterest that relate to the shoot. So obviously Hugh Jackman's the first thing that pops up. Now with Pinterest itself, it's a really simple process to use. Just a toolbar at the top here, and you can just type in. Now, there's lots of different options that it will come up with. Oh god, I didn't put Van, sorry. Okay, it obviously recognises Helsing, even though I've neglected to put Van in there as well. So what we'll do, we'll add Van. So it does give you a lot of search prompts up the top here. You can see it goes through the movie, costume, wolf, these Anna and Alira, their characters within the Hugh Jackman movie. So you see Pinterest itself is flooded with the Hugh Jackman version when it pops up. So what I would do is I start to go through and I just start to pin a few things I like. The one thing I like about the Hugh Jackman version of Van Helsing is it's very steampunk, which is they use very old-fashioned technology to do very modern-day things, i.e. they'll have like old-fashioned, Van Helsing, this particular story, it's very nondescript as to what year the actual movie is set in. But it's very much castles without electricity. It's kind of very much implied that it's, medieval, kind of really sort of old-fashioned town, but their technology is very futuristic. So that's essentially what steampunk is. So you can just go through and just start to pin some things that you like. As I said, I wasn't pulling a whole lot, apart from his awesome jacket, from these particular shots. I do like these kind of movie postery things that they've got here. I do like how they've put those together. So they're the kinds of things I would start to pin and to grab. But there's not a whole lot that I'm going to pull from that particular version of Van Helsing at the moment. So I'm just actually going to go back to my board. Now the other things that I've grabbed here, obviously there are different versions of Van Helsing. Bram Stoker's original Van Helsing was a slightly different character to the Hugh Jackman one. The one thing I've noticed is there is a little bit of an inconsistency with some of the character stories in the different versions of Van Helsing. In some movies his name's Gabriel, and some movies his name's Abraham. There just seems to be a few different versions of the tale. Anthony Hopkins apparently was in the original Bram Stoker Dracula, and he played Van Helsing. This particular image here I love. It's actually from one of my favourite TV shows on Foxtel called Penny Dreadful. This is not Van Helsing, this is actually Victor Frankenstein. But I like that, and that's what I'm saying. I pull on imagery that's not particularly necessarily specific to my character, but characters around him. I grabbed that one because I actually love the heart, I love the blood, and I actually like the red eyeliner on the model. I think that's really cool. Just to give a divergence for a second, I am obsessed with the show Penny Dreadful. It is on Foxtel. It's only run for one season. I have found that a lot of it's on YouTube, so you can go back to YouTube and I'll show you some bits and pieces in a moment from YouTube. Penny Dreadful is a really wonderful series, kind of loosely based around the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. So basically all of the characters from the movie The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which the main movie that most people know of stars Sean Connery, they're actually all in this series. But what I love about this particular series, it's set in Victorian England, which I love. Victorian England is, of course, very closely related to a lot of Gothic novels, a lot of sort of early spiritualist church movement stuff, a lot of seances, a lot of, table knocking, table rapping, table turning, spirit manifesting, kind of crazy, old-fashioned, spooky stuff, which I love. But Penny Dreadful, the series, is a much more sort of deeper and psychological, far less cookie-cutter version of all of the characters, and that's what I love. This, as I said, this particular shot here on screen is Victor Frankenstein, and it just goes a bit more in depth into, I guess, the thinking of the characters, not just, oh, that's Frankenstein and he's a crazy doctor and he made a monster. there's a lot more behind the scenes. You get to know the monster quite well, and you get to know the actual character of Dr. Frankenstein and all of them, Van Helsing, etc. You do get to know them quite more in depth. Now, for people that are interested in perhaps doing the Van Helsing shoot, we've got a couple of spots left. I'll just quickly show you some different ideas. This is actually the character Van Helsing from the Penny Dreadful story. There's a couple of quotes here. Now, in the Penny Dreadful version, Van Helsing is a lot older, he's a lot wiser, and he's a lot more somber. He certainly is not running around crash-tackling vampires. He doesn't turn into a werewolf like Hugh Jackman does. It's just a very different version of the story, and I actually like it because it's a lot more psychological and darker. What I did find so far, which I think would be very helpful for people who are perhaps interested in this particular shoot, but also people that are just interested in seeing the way that I go about doing things, I did find this great little channel on YouTube, and I will just pause it when it comes up. Quiet for a second. I found this really great little behind the scenes channel on YouTube, and this particular channel goes behind the scenes of Penny Dreadful season 1, episode by episode. And it actually is the director and the producers of the show talking about their character synopsis, talking about their version of the characters. And this particular one is actually on Van Helsing. So it only goes for a few minutes. So I'm actually going to play it for you to give you an idea.
So Malcolm is looking for a cure for something he doesn't understand. Do you? Intimately.
Bram Stoker's Dracula is the most disturbing novel ever written. Van Helsing is the steady voice there. He's the one who really knows what's going on. Ever since Bram Stoker invented Van Helsing, he leapt off the pages of the novel and quickly went into film. He's a character that we can't get enough of.
You could yet astonish the world.
Van Helsing is the guy who knows everything. He's a man of science, but he's also a man of religion. He is what we're always looking for. This world where so many bad things happen, he has the knowledge of how to make it better.
Do you believe in fate?
In Stoker's Dracula, Van Helsing has a wife who's gone mad and she's in an asylum, but in Penny Dreadful, she's become a vampire. This twist gives Van Helsing an authenticity when he talks about vampires.
You have experience with such a monster. You know what to do.
Van Helsing has studied not only science but pathology. He knows that sometimes science will fail when it comes to trying to understand what the monster is.
And again, it is simple way of taking what's been left with them. For the dead travel fast.
He's had a dark past. There's something more to him than meets the eye.
But what I am about to tell you, we cannot enlighten him.
Why not?
Because the truth is unendurable.
So hopefully that sound worked out okay. If it didn't, obviously you can sort of see it. What I might do is actually post the link directly to that particular YouTube little clip and that channel on the Meetup site as well. So it just gives you a bit more of a background into the direction I'm heading with a particular Van Helsing shoot. I wanted to take it a little bit more darker and psychological. I like that with this particular version of Van Helsing. It's funny, in the Penny Dreadful story, there's this real sort of conundrum between, they're obviously chasing monsters, but these monsters in this particular story were once human. And it's very much, there's that personal connection between the family members hunting their loved ones who the monsters have taken. But of course the only way to actually rid the world of the monsters is to kill them. So there's very much that conundrum between monster and monster hunter. Who is actually right, who is actually wrong? They are somewhat natural creatures in this particular story, so it's kind of like, well, do we let creatures live? There's just that bit more of a conundrum and I get a bit more depth to the actual story of Van Helsing here. So essentially that's kind of the direction I'm heading with this particular shoot. Now, to give you an idea too, we are shooting this particular one on location. I feel that it's something that needs to be shot. I love those movie posters of Van Helsing. This is my Flickr page, and now there is nudity involved in this particular shot, So I'm just pre-warning you before I open it. This is the location that we're actually going to be shooting the Van Helsing shot in. This is just the south end of Coogee Beach. There's a couple of different walkways. I will post the actual location, but that rock face up the top there, it's actually full on, it's there. It's actually something that, this is a model Sierra Malavik, that's a spot that Sierra found for us to shoot at. And it's just the most amazing sort of rocky outcrop. So there's a couple, it's kind of like on the walk between that, I think it's on like the Bondi to Bronte walk. It's actually just part of the walk. There's stairs either side. It's not too bad to get to at low tide. So I've checked the tide charts for the particular day of the shoot, and things are looking good. So we're going to be there sort of late afternoon, and yeah. So this is the kind of scenery we're going to be using for the Van Helsing shoot. There will be some after editing I will talk about after this shoot, depending on the day itself. We are going to be shooting with natural light. We're not going to be using any flash, though you may choose to use fill flash if you want to. I just find being by the ocean, it's nice and bright, so we don't need a whole lot of fill flash. We can certainly use reflectors. This was shot with nothing. This was just shot with the camera, you know, playing with the ISO, that sort of thing, playing with the aperture just to get the lighting right. So there's lots of after editing in this particular shot, so that's something we will talk about in the Van Helsing shoot as well. We will go through some composite editing. That particular sky in this shot here was photoshopped in. The difficulty, of course, when you are by the beach and you're trying to expose your model well and the rocks well, is the sky will completely blow out and go white. So it is necessary to add some clouds back in to give a bit of depth and character as well. So the kind of darkest, rocky sort of shoot I am going for is that kind of movie poster kind of a feel with Van Helsing. So I'm pretty excited about the particular Van Helsing shoot. I hope that gives you a bit of an idea of how I go about planning my shoots behind the scenes. Obviously with the Van Helsing shoot and all the Dark Adventure series, this is very much, when we're talking about making a story, this is very much deconstructing a story. So I'm pulling apart the versions that currently exist, and I'm going to go in a new direction slightly. So essentially I'm looking at sort of taking some of the imagery from the Hugh Jackman version, but I'm going more with the character from the Penny Dreadful series. So for those who have already signed up for the Van Helsing shoot, I will actually send you an invite soon for the link for this particular Pinterest board as it develops further. And I think there is a couple of spots, so anybody who's interested, please jump on board straight away. As I said, we've got a wonderful model for this shoot. It's a model that I've worked with before. He's quite an acclaimed actor in a lot of alternate films in Sydney, and he models too. And he's got that wonderful big flowing hair, so he's going to be a little bit sort of Hugh Jackman looking in that respect. So yeah, so that's really the behind the scenes of how I put my shoots together. As I said, I share these, I invite the other photographers involved, I invite the model involved. I like to keep very much in contact with my model during the weeks leading up to the shoots themselves. So beyond that, if anyone else has any other questions, please post them onto the Meetup site, so that way then everyone can see the question and they can see the answers with the behind the scenes shooting. I mean, obviously this one is simple because we are shooting on location. I've not got any set design. As far as set design and things like that, I might sort of post a separate little video on the Meetup site to talk about the kinds of sets that I use in the studio. Maybe I might do that this week while we've got preparations currently happening for the Snow White shoot next Thursday night. Yeah, so I might post a little video once I get closer together with the Snow White one and show you some behind the scenes if I was actually shooting something like this in the studio, how I go about it. So thank you very much. I will post this onto the Meetup site shortly.